Hello, Sooner Rotary. Welcome to our first online meeting. We're complying with the CDC recommendations and not meeting in person for some undetermined period of time to help flatten the curve of the COVID-19 pandemic. This is me up here in the corner. You'll see me, I'll be in the corner over here with my headphones on throughout. We hope that this doesn't last very long, that we have to do this online, but we'll do it as long as we need to. We normally start our meetings with the Pledge of Allegiance. We don't have a flag, so today we're not going to do that. We normally start with the four-way test, which I think that you can see here on the right-hand side of your screen. And if you'll all say it along with me, the four-way test of the things we think, say, or do. Number one, is it the truth? Number two, is it fair to all concerned? Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? And number four, will it be beneficial to all concerned? We also normally start our meetings with a prayer, and I'd like to ask everybody to say a prayer for the world, I guess, for the health and safety of everybody that we know and everybody that we don't know. This COVID-19 virus has got the world suffering from a lot of anxiety right now, and we don't really know what to do, but I pray that we all have faith and make a special effort to live the four-way test. Our program this week is about Sunshine Week. We normally begin our meetings by singing, "Oh, What a Beautiful Morning." I am not going to sing for you this morning, but I will start you off with a beautiful picture of a sunrise. What is Sunshine Week, you might ask? Well, this year, March 15th to the 21st, has been declared Sunshine Week, and sunshine refers to government transparency. Generally, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, corresponding sections of state constitutions, and in Oklahoma's case, the Oklahoma Open Records Act and the Open Meetings Act and the Federal Freedom of Information Act. This is a couple of quotes from former U.S. Supreme Court Justice Louis Brandeis. These are over 100 years old, so the topic is not something new. But if the broad light of day could be let in upon men's actions, it would purify them as the sun disinfects. Sunlight is said to be the best of disinfectants. So my own personal interest in government transparency first came about. I was a former elected school board member. We had to deal with record requests from citizens. I testified in a life insurance case. I was general counsel at the insurance commissioner's office, and when I testified, somebody came up to me before my deposition and handed me a copy of the evidence statute, the Oklahoma evidence statute, which said that there is no attorney-client privilege between a state lawyer and a state agency. It took me by surprise at the time, but since then, I've worked with the FBI, the OSBI, Attorney General, and investigative reporters on a variety of public corruption cases. I've testified in two state court public corruption cases, one federal court public corruption case, and a racketeering case that was somewhat connected to the state insurance commissioner that was prosecuted in Los Angeles. When I worked in Dubai, I persuaded the government officials there to begin publishing summaries of regulatory board meetings, and I'm president of the board of directors of Freedom of Information Oklahoma. So I've got a real interest in the topic, and I've seen the topic of government transparency work in the legal system. I've seen it take down some people who have been guilty of committing some crimes. I have heard from government officials and employees a number of things that that sound right, maybe at first glance. Meeting agendas should be vague. Large record requests, you can push them off and do them last. Public employee personnel records are confidential. That sounds like it makes sense. You can turn over your documents to an attorney and claim them as privileged and confidential, and that communications between a public official and an attorney are protected by the attorney-client privilege. The problem with all of those statements is every one of them is wrong. Public documents are not subject to the same confidentiality provisions that private documents are. The reason, one of the reasons is the U.S. and Oklahoma constitutions prohibit any law that would restrain or abridge freedom of the press. And if you want to look that up, you can look it up here. I hope you can see this pointer. The First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution, and there's the provision of the Oklahoma Constitution. The Oklahoma Constitution, this is actually a quote from Title 51, which is a statute, but it states that the Oklahoma Constitution recognizes and guarantees that all political power is inherent in the people, and it's the public policy that the people are vested with the inherent right to know and be fully informed. So that forms the basis for a part of our right to know. The Open Meeting Act, which is in a different part of the statutes, also says that it's public policy of the state to encourage and facilitate the citizens' understanding of government processes and problems. This is the act that requires government meetings to be open, that agendas have to be posted in advance. They can't consider things that aren't on the agenda. They can't consider things in executive session behind closed doors without notifying what they are. And even then, there's only certain limited things that they can consider outside of the earshot of citizens. And then the Open Records Act was first passed back in the 1980s, and it's to guarantee the public's right to see and review government records. There's just a few exceptions to the Open Records Act, things like law enforcement records. There are certain personnel records, but you will often see in newspaper accounts that somebody was terminated from state employment, and the agency that terminated them said, we're not going to say anything about why they were terminated because it's personnel records. The fact of the matter is that the Oklahoma Open Records Act says that any records regarding the termination, demotion, suspension of an employee are available to the public. So the general rule under the Open Records Act is that all government records are available. There are a few exceptions, but other than those exceptions, you can request and get any government records that you want. The evidence code, Oklahoma is in the minority of states. There's just a few states that have a provision like this. You may be familiar with what's called the attorney-client privilege. What that means is that a client can talk to an attorney and get advice about something that he either has done or plans to do. And the attorney can't reveal that conversation to anybody else unless the client is planning to do something that's going to harm somebody. Um, the public policy reason behind this is similar to the public policy reason for the physician-patient privilege, and that is if you go to a doctor, you want to feel comfortable that you can tell that doctor everything, even if it's embarrassing, even if it's shameful, even if it's something that might be harmful to your relationship with your spouse. You want to be able to tell your doctor everything in total confidence so that you can get the appropriate medical treatment. Same thing with the attorney-client privilege. Client needs to be able to tell his attorney or her attorney anything with the assurance that the attorney's not going to go tell anybody else. So there's an exception to that, though, and that is if the attorney happens to work for the state, that there's a presumption that communications between the state's attorney and a state agency or officer are not entitled to privilege. They're not confidential. And the reason for that is that the attorney doesn't represent the insurance commissioner or the banking commissioner or the superintendent of public instruction. The attorney represents the people of the state. And so the people of the state are entitled to know about those conversations. The only exception to that is if the communication concerns a pending investigation, claim, or action, and a court determines that disclosure will seriously impair the ability to process a pending investigation, litigation, or proceeding in the public interest. It's a really tough test to meet, so the general rule is that a state attorney is not entitled to the attorney-client privilege. The Federal Freedom of Information Act covers all federal records, federal government records, and requires federal agencies to disclose all those records unless they fall under one of these 9 limited exemptions. The exemptions are similar to, but not exactly like, the exemptions that are provided in Oklahoma law. The Federal Freedom of Information Act does provide for privileged communications. It does recognize that a conversation between a federal agency and its attorney or another agency even is entitled to confidential treatment. That's different than Oklahoma records regarding Oklahoma agencies. The philosophy behind the public policy of government transparency can be said to be what President Theodore Roosevelt said: the government is us. We are the government, you and I. It's not us versus them. It's not us versus the government. We are the government. And here's a quote by me. If a government official has an us versus them attitude, he or she is a dirty, stinking scoundrel who is likely to infect colleagues and subordinates. Such scoundrels should be employed only in positions of strenuous and smelly manual labor, where their tiny minds only have to decide where to place the next shovelful of poop. So this is Michael Ridgway's philosophy behind the public policy of government transparency. I think this is the last thing that I want to talk about in our presentation this morning, and that is Freedom of Information Oklahoma, which is a nonprofit, non-governmental organization whose mission is promoting open and transparent government in Oklahoma. You might be interested to know that In addition to me being the president of Freedom of Information Oklahoma, Sooner Rotary proudly has two other members who are on the board, Sandra Longcrier and Dick Pryor. We all have a vision of an Oklahoma where government is open and transparent, the public is active and engaged, public information is easily accessible. As a matter of law, the first and third visions there are a reality. Government is open and transparent. Public information is easily accessible once you know that it's available and you know how to go about getting it. The public is active and engaged. I would sure like to see more people get involved in politics, in elections, and in investigating what's going on inside of state government. So the American Society of News Editors and Freedom of Information Oklahoma have declared Freedom of Information Day, March 16th, 2020, which was yesterday, and Sunshine Week, which we are currently in, March 15th to the 21st of 2020. And last week, I went before the city of Norman, and the city of Norman adopted a proclamation of the mayor of the city of Norman proclaiming the week of March 15th through 21st as Sunshine Week, and Monday, March 16th as Freedom of Information Day in the city of Norman. The paragraphs in the proclamation are very similar to the slides that you've seen in this presentation. I don't know if you're able to read the proclamation on your screen, but I thought it was a pretty big deal. So resources that you can, if you want to get more information, Oklahoma Press Association sponsors free open meeting and open records seminars. Information on those is available at the link there. And if you want general information, news, training, advocacy, contact Freedom of Information Oklahoma. Contact its executive director, or of course, if you're a member of Sooner Rotary, feel free to ask me or Sandra or Dick, and we could probably get information and resources for you. I think Sandra's over here on my right messing with something, and I can't jump my slide forward. Oh, I still can't jump my slide forward. I think she's trying to jump my slide forward for me. There we go. So I want to thank you for listening to this. This is an experiment. It's the first time that we've done this. It's unfortunate that we are doing it under the circumstances that we're doing it, but hopefully this opens a door to where we can share programs with the rest of the world, and maybe other clubs might come to our website and use them as makeups. Don't forget to share your comments to this presentation. Check your email and our Facebook group page and our website for updates about upcoming meetings. Email soonerrotary@gmail.com if you need any help during this time of self-quarantine. And I think that on behalf of all of our members, we also would urge you that if you do need any help with anything during this time, I think all of us Rotarians have that service above self heart. So I think you can contact any of us individually. Thank you for watching. Now go out and connect the world.